Voila, I have done it. I read many times and presented a book about cadavers. Let's wrap it up. It was an interesting experience, factual, shocking, informative, gruesome, grotesque, scary, but not without humor. In a nutshell, it was tasty, and I sank my teeth into it to go along with Mariluce's culinary imagery. We have seen in chapter 1 that a head is a terrible thing to waste. Practicing surgery on the dead in a USFC in University of San Francisco, California anatomy lab were heads of donated bodies resting in pans waiting to receive plastic surgeries at the hand of plastic surgeons and residents. The question I closed the chapter with was, should they? The author answered the question. She said, well, they donated their bodies to be used in improving other lives. So what would they care? They are dead and they donated their bodies. Whatever they do with them, they do with them. Now, what's your answers? What's your opinion? Then we move to crimes of anatomy, body snatching, and other sordid tales from the dawn of human dissections. This chapter takes us across medical history to times when bodies did not used to be donated, and to the beginning of medical dissections or dissections in the name of science. Bodies were received as enforcement of dual sentences, such as in England, for example, snatched off graves or murdered. The question, do we need dissection to teach or learn about human anatomy? In Life After Death, on human decay and what can we do about it, we visited the body farm in Knoxville, Tennessee, where bodies are lying exposed to environmental elements to tell us more about their story through the stages of decay and bodily secreted chemicals. The goal is to help forensic science to establish times of death. The question, how safe to the workers, researchers, and environment is such farm? In chapter 4, Dead Man Driving is about the use of human dummies in testing motor impact crash with the purpose to improve transport safety. And in chapter 5, Beyond the Black Box, the chapter discusses how bodies tell the story of plane crash. In chapter 6, Cadavers who joined the army. Well, you guessed it, it's about using cadavers in military and police experiments by using bodies to understand the mechanism of bullet impact. Is this what it is? Yes, that's true. Also, the bodies in the experiment are used to investigate how to stop death. Ironically, the research aimed at manufacturing bullets that incapacitate but do not kill, that break inside the target to minimize collateral damage. What do you think was the question? Should donated bodies be used as dummies in motor vehicle crash experiments, for example? Chapter 7 takes us on a kind of takes the dead on a religious pilgrimage somewhat. The bodies are used to verify the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin that was used to cover Jesus' body for burial, and that surged a few centuries after the crucifixion. Should donated bodies be used for religious indoctrination? That was the author's question. It's mine also, and I think it's yours. You might question it, right? And then in chapter 8 is about when to pronounce a person dead and bury them or harvest their organs. She took us on a historical ride that winded up to modern times that define brain death as legal death, leaving the body fit for burial or organ harvest. We started up with H, a beating heart cadaver, warm to the touch body, to the cold, eviscerated, eyes stuffed awkwardly and jaggedly sewn together body, rushed up to the morgue. While the histories of death definition were taking us now and then from H, the beating heart cadaver, just to bring us back to her still being harvested. Chapter 9, just ahead, decapitation, reanimation, and human head transplant. The titles in all chapters sum up what is coming. This chapter is the gruesome, is gruesome one, is one of the gruesome ones. It starts with the story of the guillotine in the past in France and attempts to localize the soul and reanimate the heads to experimentation with animals by cutting, resecting, and transplanting their heads, brains, and organs on each other's bodies with some success that was limited with lack of knowledge about immunosuppressive therapy. The question that was imposed was human head transplant next. How helpful would it be? And of course, how successful and ethical would it be? Chapter 10, Eat Me, Medicinal Cannibalism, tells the story of using human byproducts or human parts or even other humans for healing, such as the use of the mummified man, the mummies, aborted fetuses and placentas, and then human secretions such as snot, spittles, menstruation, blood, etc. Overall, the most cannibal stories that were not medicinal were caused either by hunger or hate, but taste cannibalism was reported to have been rare. Then there was the story of some of the art students who also studied anatomy and bought 12 cadavers on which they lived for 2 months and claimed their health improved after that. The question the author asks, should we eat corpses instead of burying them, burning or composting them out of practicality? This leads us to chapter 11, out of the fire and into the compost. Cremation was initially sold as a purifying agent and better than burying bodies who create noxious miasma that rises in the air and creates sickness. Composting came with the same idea to annihilate cremation. Don't bury them, don't burn them, defreeze them in nitrogen, grind them and use them as fertilizers. What's your opinion? Do you think it's a practical idea? Chapter 12 talks about what the author would want her remains be done with, ending in an anatomy lab with flappy, wrinkled skin is not appealing at all. Maybe a skeleton is beautiful, but there was no way she could have that. Plastination is appealing, but unaffordable. Plastination is the process of removing all water from organic body and replacing it with liquid silicone polymer. Plastinated bodies, donated bodies, toured Europe as an art exhibit. She decided that it is not something to worry about, and all the ones who make all those preparations for death are scared of death. In case, however, she ends up in an anatomy lab, she would be thrilled to be recognized as the one who wrote about cadavers. Now tell me your opinion. What do you think? I presented each chapter in depth, and I've summed them all up here. And I think it's something that's interesting. It's an interesting book just because it had me question certain things, and just because also how our opinions change across time. And they are mostly cultural bond, and also sometimes what's around us imposes certain opinions or ideas or beliefs that we end up adopting ourselves. So don't hesitate. Join in this discussion and post your comments. The book that another book that I will be talking about, and it's hers also in Mary Roche's, is Spook. It's interesting, and it also discusses the idea of the soul, the idea of spirits, spirituality, death, uh, psychology, parapsychology. It's very, very broad spectrum, and it does it in some kind of a subtle way. Well, see you next. Bye bye.